Hello, everybody. We're just going to wait until everybody can join and we'll get started. Wait, should we pull up the slides while we're waiting for people? Here it comes. Beautiful. Good. Okay, I think we've reached a steady state on the number of people joining. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome back to our Thursday update on the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial. I'm here with Allison Bullat and Catherine Small, and we're going to give you a little update on status and then take questions from people. I'll just start by saying that this platform trial is really a collaboration with so many people, our academic partners, our partners at NEALS, the participants in the study, the FDA, and then our many foundations who have given support for this platform trial and the companies that we're working with. It's getting harder to fit them all on the slide. Next slide, please. So just for anyone who might be new to this weekly webinar, we launched the first platform trial in ALS called the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial in 2020 because there were so many drugs in development for people with ALS, and there still are so many, that we wanted to have a much more efficient way to screen the drugs to find the best ones. And this is an idea borrowed from cancer on how to share infrastructure, share data from people in the different arms of the study and get to answers faster. And we started with 4 drugs, A, B, C, D. We've shared those results. We're currently fully enrolled for Regimen E, which is with Celos, and we expect those results end of the year. And we are actively enrolling in regimens F and G. And F is with our partners Calico, and G with our partners Denali. And so those are the 2 that are enrolling right now. So if somebody comes in for this study, they are randomized to one of those 2 drugs. And then there's a second randomization where 75% of people get active drug, 25% get matching placebo for 6 months. And then after that, everyone goes into the active treatment extension where everybody receives the active drug until we have the results of the study. So Calico and Denali are 2 active ones. They both work on something called the integrated stress response and TDP-43 biology. We've had a science webinar about Calico that's on our website, and we're planning one for Denali later this summer. Next slide, please. So we have a lot of sites now, more than 50 that are open and actively enrolling for Regimen F. Here is just a map that shows our active sites. You can also find that with the QR code here, as well as on clinicaltrial.gov and the HEALEY website. We are aiming for about 70 sites. So we have, the majority active. Since our last call, we have 3 new ones. Cleveland Clinic, George Washington University, and Hackensack have opened. And why don't they all enroll at the same time? And for every study, we need to get the ethics approval for that site, as well as train them. And some sites can have the staff and the ability to go very fast, and others, for turnover, other reasons, just take a little longer. But this study in particular has gotten off the ground even faster than A through E. So we're very excited about some of that progress. Next slide, please. This is just an update for Regimen F. Again, that's with the Calico drug. So since we started, 119 people have come in and expressed interest in being in the study and signed informed consent at the master protocol level, of which 76 have been assigned to Regimen F and 64 then randomized to active drug or placebo. And our current goal for this is to reach around 240 people. So we're a quarter of the way there, and we really are just getting started. So this is really a phenomenal enrollment rate. Of course, the faster we enroll, the faster we get the results. So we're very excited about that. Next slide, please. So we have a lot of information about Regimen F, that's Calico. We have a little less information about G, but we'll have the same amount. And, every time we put something up, we need to get it reviewed by the ethics board. And that's, really just to make sure that we're saying things that are accurate and not misleading. And so that's just a requirement for all clinical trials. So we have materials that explain the science. We have a great recording, a video on the science, about 10 or 15 minutes on the science, and then the questions from many of you on that webinar. There's a brochure you can print out about not just the drug, but also about the some of the procedures in that regimen. This is one where we're asking people really to donate spinal fluid twice, once at the beginning and once at the end of the study, to look at biomarkers to really help us determine the effect of the drug on the biomarkers, which we know is really important because we just had a drug approved by the FDA based on biomarkers, and also to see if there might be some people who respond differently to the drug based on those markers in the spinal fluid. So really, really important part of this study. Next slide, please. So Regimen G started a little after Regimen F, and this is with Denali. So now we have 11 sites enrolling, many more kind of on the way, and this just shows where they are. So for example, if you go to the site that is enrolling for F and G, then you will be randomized to either one, F or G. If you go to the site right now that's only open for F, then F would be what you would be offered. And again, our goal is to have all 70 of the sites enrolling for both of them very soon, hopefully. We'll keep giving you updates on the sites. The most recent one added for G is Vanderbilt. Next slide, please. So we do have already some resources about Regimen G on our website. And we are, with Catherine's help, we are planning a science webinar where the scientists from Denali will come and tell you about their drug and answer all your questions. So again, whenever we want to do that, we also need the slides reviewed by the ethics board, and so that needs to happen first, and then they can present them, and we record it and keep that up on our website. Next slide, please. So we have the date, and so it's July 20th. It's going to be an hour, so it'll be the same time, but we just extend it 5 to 6. And we'll have, again, people from Denali here to tell you about their science and their and the reason they're excited about the drug and the reason why we're excited about it as well. If you want to register, there's a link here. We can put that also in the chat, and of course, it'll be up on our website as well. Next slide, please. So if you want to check if a site near you is open, you can look on online on our website, but you can also reach out to Catherine Small, who's here on the call, who I know many of you know, who can also help connect you with the site closest to you that's open and enrolling participants. Next slide, please. So we intermittently have our great statisticians come and talk about why we design trials the way we do, and answer questions about the statistics. And so we had one in June that was scheduled, and we were supposed to have one, I guess, today, but that's being rescheduled, and that will be June 21st from 1 to 2, and this is led from the Northeast ALS Consortium. These are really good. These are statisticians and investigators who are really good at explaining statistics and clinical design to people. So we will record it as well if you can't attend it live. Next slide. So Catherine and Allison are here. They're really a resource for people like you living with ALS. They can answer about questions about the platform trial. They often answer questions about other trials and help connect you. Particularly Catherine will help connect you to sites that are open, and if you're interested in being part of this study. We have a couple other webinars coming up. Next week, we're going to be talking about lumbar punctures, our spinal to get spinal fluid, and we have Dr. Shafiq Lada from Barrow Neurological Institute coming to answer questions about that. And then the week after, we've invited Hilda Gutierrez from Bethesda Deaconess, who's one of the sites, to come and talk to us about their site and answer questions about the platform trial. Next slide, please. That's it. Good. I saw a lot of questions coming in while I was talking, so and I see Sabrina's here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the presentation, Merit.
Sure.
Do you want me to read the questions to you, or?
Well, I was going to read them to you. How about
Okay.
that? Why not? We can go back and forth. I can start.
Sure.
So there was a question about how many people are enrolled in Regimen G, and when do we expect enrollment to be complete of the 240 participants?
Yeah, so I don't have the numbers as of today of Regiment G. We can definitely get them for next week. We started a little bit more recently than Regiment F, so I don't know if I don't think we've seen the report, because again, that's brand new enrollment. So obviously we whenever we start enrolling for the second regiment, obviously the numbers will go up and ultimately will catch up. But we're gonna be able to give kind of enrollment timelines when we have all the sites up and running, and we can provide firmer timelines for that.
Yeah. And similar, there's a question of if Las Vegas will become a Regiment F site.
I believe so. I right now, again, I don't know the exact status. Maybe Catherine, if you can help us find out. Right at the beginning of the trial, I had to say we remember the sites one by one, but now we actually have grown to over 70 sites and many regiments. So, but we can definitely check. And maybe Catherine, if you can look it up, if they're already active, that would be great. If they're not active yet, I'm sure they're working on all of this.
Yeah, I don't think they're quite up and running, but I just checked our, spreadsheet over here, and we're hoping to get them up and running by the end of this month. But you can reach out to me directly, and I can keep you updated.
Great. So there's a question about whether Regimen F and G results will read out at the same time, and whether there would be any bias would one impact the other.
Well, I expect that they will come out roughly at the same time, because the difference between the two is only a few weeks. It doesn't actually matter if they come out kind of back to back with a few weeks in between. It's not going to cause any bias because each of them again stands kind of individually. So it's not necessary for them to read out at the same time.
Okay, there's a question. When will follow-up trials start for the regimens that showed some efficacy, and will the follow-up trial still be part of the platform trial? So I think this refers to Regimen C and D.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we designed the trial as a way to rapidly screen drugs and move them along the clinical trial path. And so we always partner with the companies to try to help facilitate that and kind of start the next trials right after. So I do expect that companies will start their trials soon after the results. And I think that's still in the planning stages, but they're probably going to be a separate trial, simply because the goals of the study at that time will be different. And so they sort of learned a lot from participation in the platform trial, and now they can set up a follow-up study to test the drug in kind of, and have a phase 3 trial.
There's a question about whether there's more expanded access protocol spots that will open if people don't pass screening into the trial.
Oh, that's a great question. So first of all, there's now finally a few EAPs that are happening in the US. I have to say that's really a change compared to just a couple of years ago. There are spots for different EAPs available. As part of the platform trial, we started an EAP companion in 2021, and now we are up to 4 drugs tested with that EAP companion. The first 3 programs are sort of on the smaller side, but now the most recent program, which is for Regimen E's drug, Trialos, has 70 spots. And right now we have 8 sites open, but the other sites are actually making significant progress in terms of getting activated. And so there is a list of sites on clinicaltrials.gov. Those are all the sites, I believe 17 of them, that have the contracts executed, and then hopefully we'll again, we'll continue to update that. So Catherine, if you can put in the chat the contact information. But long story short, yes, there are spots for EAPs. So we really hope to be able to bring it as close as possible to where people live. It's something that we're really, trying to work hard towards. But contact also Catherine if you have questions about how to find a spot.
Great. There's a question asking if we could remind when the presentation for Regimen G science will happen, and that's July 20th. And I think, I don't know, Catherine, if you could put again the how to register and the date in the chat, that would be fantastic. There's a question specific to Vanderbilt, and I can answer this one, or I can try to answer is there someone's at that site, it's been assigned to G, but the site isn't ready for G. Is there anything we can do about that? And so we'll follow up for that. They should be ready for that. But maybe there's someone, sometimes people, like someone leaves at the staff who knew how to do the study, and then we have to retrain their new staff. But we'll follow up on that to make sure that they are ready for you. And thank you again for being part of the study. Vanderbilt's now open for FNG.
And I see that Catherine has put a number of great links in the chat, so thank you for that. They're answering different questions that are coming in.
Yeah.
So please check the chat.
Yeah. And I want to say that, I mean, once everybody hears the science and Regimen G, while both F and G are targeting this integrated stress response and the TDP-43 biology, they aren't identical drugs. And so it, and that's why we really decided that it would be an okay thing for the platform trial to have both in, because there are different pharmacokinetics and different approaches, and they might not end up having identical results. And no matter what, if they did it alone, 2 standalone trials, it's much less efficient than doing 2 trials like that in a setup like the platform trial. Okay, I think I see another question in here. All right. Has the medical research community ever investigated family members who get sporadic ALS versus those who don't get sporadic ALS, specifically one twin who has ALS and another, let's say, identical twin who does not have ALS, or between siblings where one has it and one does not?
Wow, that's a great question. I know that there's colleagues who are working on basically all the aspects of genetics, and they're trying to, people have started to quantify sort of how much of ALS is inherited, not just in terms of the known genes that can cause disease, but there could be other factors that contribute to the risk of developing ALS. And so I cannot give you a number in terms of, exactly the 2 scenarios that you mentioned in the question, but definitely there's both. There are some modifiers of risk and progression that could be inherited. And so we know that there are some that actually increase the risk of getting ALS, basically put someone over the edge. And so maybe 2 siblings, one has, the modifier and gets ALS, and another one doesn't get ALS. So it's definitely a very complex interplay of genetic and environmental factors.
Yeah, there's definitely, I agree completely with Sabrina. I know Dr. Brown and some of the other geneticists are doing just what you described. They have several identical twins with where one has ALS, one doesn't, and trying to understand the difference, because you're right, that might really give us some great insights. There's a great question about whether there's efficiencies in ALS therapy development that can be driven beyond platform trials, and how can the HEALEY concept grow? And I have some ideas on that, but I want to maybe let
this is such a great question. Well, a couple of things. So first of all, we've been contacted by a number of groups. I believe that now we're almost at 20 groups from different areas of the neurosciences and also beyond neurology. They have really asked us, how can you, help us set up our own platform trials or drive therapy development. So that's one way in which we are kind of helping others grow their own programs, both within ALS, actually in the global community, but also for other diseases. The other thing that I would say is that we are publishing papers. Actually, our second paper was just published, and we will publish it open access. We're just waiting for the publisher to process kind of the request, and hopefully we will advertise it. So we're definitely helping others also think about the best way to model their trials. So that's just the start. I don't know, Merit, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I'd say that's how we're trying to get the platform concept, broader than ALS. And also, I think within ALS, there's really room for platform trials in the prevention space. If we're going to start, at least for the genetic forms of the illness, start to develop trials to try to delay onset, or in the genetic forms of it in people with symptomatic. So I think there's room for other types of platform trials. But I think there's other efficiencies in general. You know, we every couple months we look at the field and say, what are the barriers? What's slowing down progress? And you know, one of the things we did was this idea of master contracts with sites and a central ethics board. So and that cut down a year from in study startup, and then the platform trial, which cuts down, you know, a couple of years in drug development. And the other hole, I think, is and someone asked about this, like what's happening with the company with some positive results and when will they go to phase 3? And the biggest barrier there is actually investment, fundraising, or who's, and so we see so many companies with such great drugs and academics, and there's just, they can spend years trying to raise the funds to get into the next phase for patients. And I know there's, you know, smarter people than me and investment thinking about how do we actually change the model of how we invest in and support these companies so that we can get rid of that what is really, I think, wasted time. But there's and then the other thing I was thinking of is, you know, this really fundamental shift that happened with the approval of tofersen, which is a gene therapy for people with SOD1 familial ALS, where it was approved on an accelerated basis on a biomarker. That's a huge change in our field, and there's neurofilament might not be the only biomarker, so we need to develop more of those short-term measures that change and predict clinical response, and that will really cause incredible efficiencies in therapy development. So those are just a couple ideas, but there's a lot to do. There's a question which and I have to say that I don't have the answer yet for you, but I think we should try to bring it back next week or the week after, which is for regimens A through D. When will the participants in there who know whether they were on an active drug or placebo?
Yeah, so I can start commenting on this, and then Merit, please expand. But essentially, for now, because, you know, based on FDA guidance on sort of the guidance that people cannot be unblinded as long as the data is used in an active trial. That's true for standalone trials. And so for now, that's the guidance that we're following. I think it's important as the platform trial continues to grow and some studies have been fully completed, it's going to be important for us to think about, you know, could we actually now tell participants for the previous regimens, the ones that are completely finished, can we start telling them again their treatment assignment? I mean, personally, obviously, as a physician, I completely understand the reason for this question, and so we need to have those discussions with regulators and make sure that that's something that we can do right now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a complicated question in platform trials because, as Sabrina says, we continue to use the information, you know, and that's the efficiency of the platform, but it's balancing that out with really important to let people know what they were on. So that's why we haven't done it yet. I mean, we're definitely talking about it and making sure we do it the right way so we don't jeopardize, you know, the current trials. So there's a question, can we please comment on the recent information of the Parkinson's drug, and I think this is ropinirole, and if it will be prescribed for ALS?
Yeah, so to summarize what we know so far, this particular drug, ropinirole, is used for another indications such as, you know, sort of movement disorders, and so it was actually screened in a lab test using induced pluripotent stem cells to see, you know, along with other drugs, and this kind of came out of the screen that was done in Japan by other colleagues, and in the lab, it was thought to have some beneficial effects, again, in that specific cellular model in the lab. And so the investigators in Japan took it one step further and tested it in a small group of people living with ALS, again, based on the science from the lab. And so the results of the study just came out, and I think it's in a high impact journal, mostly because the trial design is very interesting, and they also looked at PBMCs or sort of, cells from the patients who participated to try to see if they could replicate the same results that I had seen before in the lab. I mean, I think that the concept is interesting in terms of the methodology, how to leverage stem cells to screen drugs, but it's way too early to tell if this particular drug works for people with ALS. So I think it's one of those that requires additional testing.
Yeah, I agree. The numbers were really small, and it does have actually a fair amount of side effects. Still, the exciting approach of using iPS motor neurons to screen for drugs. So hopefully they'll move forward with the phase 2 study. Is there any information on the clinical trial of the Verge drug? This is I believe a PIK5 inhibitor.
Yeah, actually, I don't know about the status of that trial. I know it's obviously something that's in development, but I don't know if it opened or not. Do you know? Or
I don't know the update on that, but we can find out and share next week if there's anything public about it. We are interested in that company. There's a couple of companies now with this same class of drugs called PIK5 inhibitors. I think it's AI Therapeutics Verge, Genomics, and Accurastem. Yeah.
No, the mechanism is certainly interesting, but
it'd be good. It'd be a good webinar on that pathway. To have. Do patients have access to previous, not currently enrolling regimens like C and D? I think you need expanded access.
There are a couple of expanded access protocols for this, and that's actually the EAP companion that I was alluding to earlier. So there is an expanded access protocol that's managed by Clean, the manufacturer of CNM-Au8, and that's ongoing at many sites. And again, the status of that can be checked on clinicaltrials.gov, but essentially that's definitely available at many sites across the US. And then in terms of D or predopidine, we have a relatively small expanded access protocol that's ongoing right now. I will say that we are hoping to expand it over the next few months, pending different funding decisions and other projects. So,
thank you. I think we have time for one last question here, which is, could you comment on whether therapies targeting endogenous retroviruses like HerveK or PEG10 are candidates for the HEALEY platform trial?
I had to say, I find this pathway incredibly intriguing and fascinating and novel, not so novel, I guess, but really something that needs to be studied. And it was really led by Dr. Naff and colleagues at the NIH, really looking into this pathway first, and then other people followed, and a couple of companies have also looked into this. I would absolutely love to work on this. It's just a matter of, again, finding kind of the right partners and making sure that we can make it happen.
Yeah, we're talking. The challenge with the HerveK drugs that Dr. Nath is working on is that they're all marketed drugs. There's 4 different ones, and there's no one company behind it or no source of funding. So I think for that to join the platform trial, we'd probably have to write an NIH grant, which is not impossible. Just not speedy. Yeah. But great questions. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope you come back next week and also join the Neil's webinar on biostatistics as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.